So let's look at pacing and timing. So this is going to bring together quite a lot of really useful information that we've covered already. This is how we can constantly know where we are on a map and plan a little section ahead of us. So Naismith rule is quite a popular one amongst rambling groups and other sort of walkers. And even up to, full-blown winter mountaineers. This is really vital. On average, we walk about 4 kilometers in 1 hour. So 1 kilometer will cover in about 15 minutes. Now, this is something that you're going to have to go out and explore for yourselves. So we'll cover how you can do this when we meet. But just to give you a bit of a flavour of what's going to be coming up, speed equals distance over time. We know that. Time equals distance divided by the speed, and distance equals speed times time. Now then, that's quite a lot to try and work out when it's really cold, minging wet, rain's hammering in your face, and you're tired. So I have got, and you'll be given one, a pacing card. So if we are travelling, for example, 50 metres at 6 kilometres an hour, it will take us roughly half a minute. Very similar sort of timings at 5 kilometres an hour. A little bit longer at 4, for example. Now, we've been looking a little bit at the ruler on the compass. We've looked at contours. We can measure distances. And I've also put down here, if you've got a map and compass in front of you, on a 1 to 25,000 scale map, 4 millimetres is equivalent to 100 metres on the ground. 1 millimetre is equivalent to 25 metres on the ground. And I've given you also for the different scale maps depending on what you might have in front of you. So let's have a look at this in practice, and then we'll come back and explore what I was doing there in slightly more detail. Cool, so we've looked at various different aspects now relating to setting the map and orientating it. So I'm stood here at Square Corner on the North York Moors, and I can see exactly where I am on the map. And I am now looking to take this Naismith rule a little bit further. So how can I position myself and calculate exactly where I am on the map? Now, we know speed equals distance over time. So let's do this in a practical sense. So the first thing I need to do is find myself a target, and I have found myself a target. I can use my ruler and I can measure it, and that's 1 centimetre. I've got a little cheat card here which you'll all get a copy of when you come on the course, and that tells me on a 1 to 25,000 scale map, which this is, it tells me here 4 millimetres equals 100 metres. So up to that gate, which I can see in the distance, it's 250 metres. Now I'm going to pace this, and what we count is double pacing. This may take a little while for you to work out. For me, my dominant leg is my left leg. So every time this strikes the ground, I will count. So it's a double pace. So I'll just give you a quick demo. 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to count all the way to that gate. It's 250 metres, so my final value, I'll divide it by 2.5, and that will tell me exactly how many paces I take in 100 metres. I've made it to my destination, and I took 135 steps. So divide that by 2.5, which I worked out earlier. That's 54 double paces per 100 metres. Now that's pretty standard with me, and this is what you need to go and practice. Find a stretch of path that's relatively level, measure it,
and then just count all the way along it and divide by however many 100 meters it is. So for silver award, you'll want to start looking at how does that change when you start going uphill, and also how you go downhill, and also what it's like when you're going over rougher ground such as the Heather Moorland itself. So there are different types of aspects of slope and different types of terrain that will change your double paces per 100 meters. Now you may have noticed, or you may not, I started my top stopwatch while I was walking. That took me 2.5 minutes to get there. And that tells me, again, and this is on your little cheat sheet, which I shall give you, I did 250 meters, so 200 plus 50 meters. I was doing about 6 kilometers an hour. So there's 200 meters, 2 minutes plus half a minute, 2.5 minutes to do that stretch. So I can now accurately pinpoint how long it takes me to walk somewhere, and I can even measure the distance just by walking along it and counting.
So you've just seen me doing a little bit of timing and pacing. So let's have a look at a bit more closely at what I was doing there. So here we have Rosebery Topping. So this is where we're going to be holding the bronze practical aspect of the course. And we'll meet at this car park here, and there's a gate just there. So just putting in a marker, we have a gate here, and we have a boundary line here which opens into the open access terrain. So there's quite a lot we're going to talk about when we get here, but concentrating just on that timing and pacing. I'm drawing in the grid lines for you just to give a bit of perspective to this. So if you remember, this is a 1 to 25,000 scale map. So each grid box is 1 kilometre square. So that's 1 kilometre in distance. So actually it's not very far to get to the summit of Rosebery Topping. But let's bring in the compass here and start getting some scale involved. So it's a bit big, sorry, it does kind of freak people out a little bit, but this is the Romer scale. So we can use the Romer scale to measure a bit of distance. So here I'm looking at this section of track here because there's a bend in it, and I can measure this relatively accurately, but it's not brilliant. Again, you know, as we're starting out, it's good to get best practice. So let's kind of get rid of that, and let's look at using the ruler itself. That's far more accurate. So we get 5 millimeters. Actually, if we include this little bit at the corner, it's 6. So that's about 6 millimeters, really, if we're being a bit anal about it. And that's 150 meters. To turn it around and measure the long stretch, here we're getting 1 centimeter. So that equates to 250 meters. So in total, we've got 400 meters, which is from this gate up until the boundary line into the forest. So here we are, just looking at a bit of an angle. We know it's roughly 400 meters. We've measured it. We're never going to be particularly precise, but again, using the ruler gives you extra precision. There's me, and I can walk along to that stretch and then up to my boundary line. I can time it as well, and I can pace it. So what we do is basically walk along, count our dominant leg every time that strikes the ground, and doing that, I can then divide that total number by 4, and that gives me my paces per 100 meters. So that's what I was doing in that video there. Now, if we walk 400 meters in 6 minutes, we are traveling at 4 kilometers an hour. So I'm adding timing and pacing to be able to pinpoint where I am on the map. If we know we typically walk at 5 kilometers an hour, we know it will take us 5 minutes to get to the other end of the lane. So this is a really powerful tool, and we can break down navigation sections using timing and pacing to so accurately pinpoint and know exactly where we are at all times. It's absolutely marvellous. It's totally geeky, but it's really, really cool and marvellous. So on average, we do walk 4 kilometres in an hour, so 1 kilometre in 15 minutes. Now it's going to take you time to go out and experiment, and it involves a little bit of experience now and to feel how fast you are walking. So at bronze, we're not looking at difficult terrain or steep ascents, descents, but we are needing to be aware of them and how that is going to affect our speed and also our pacing. So the ground conditions and general fitness will all affect our speed as well. And if we're starting out at the beginning of the day, we're likely to be a lot faster, we're fresher than if we're doing a sort of 30-kilometre epic march across the moors. By the end of the day, we're likely to be a lot slower and then also struggling uphill. And in general, we'll add 30 seconds to 1 minute per 10-metre contour of ascent into our calculations. Unless it's extremely steep, we ignore contours on descent. So we're going to cover all of that in detail. What we're really wanting to be focusing on the practical side of this course is just looking at our pacing over relatively good flat ground. And you can take any stretch like I did in the film and also on this demonstration on the screen, and you can measure it. And if it's a roughly sort of a nice even number, or sort of as I did first off, 250 meters, or in this case 400, you can just count your double paces, so every time your dominant leg strikes the ground, all the way to the end, and then divide by however many 100 meters it is. So on silver, we will come on to different gradients and different terrain types. So for now, we just want to get really, really good and really accurate at our flat sort of flatland kind of pacing.